think that's gonna.
Day. I have a theory quiz at 9.
Is that your first thing?
Yes.
Oh, to be a college student.
Yes.
To start the day
Start the day at 9 o'clock.
My Tuesday, Thursday start around 8 though.
That's still sexy.
Well, I mean, I don't wake up at 9 though. I got to warm up every morning.
You don't have to.
Music.
That's a lie.
No.
Right.
Okay, so we've got a lot to get to.
Okay. It's a
So
cute,
I would
that's a
plan
cute
on this.
water bottle.
It's a Camelback.
It's cute.
Thanks. I don't know what this, I don't know. What do you say to something that's like that demoralizing? It's a cute water
That sound
bottle.
like
That's like what they would tell you if you were in like grade school on the playground and you got like dehydrated.
Since when is cute degrading? It's a positive word.
It sounded like a compliment to me.
Get out of here. If you think that telling another man that something that's cute is like, he's going to be like, thank you. He's like, I never knew my father. Like he's got daddy issues. My dad never told me I was cute, and it affects me every day.
That's cute.
Yeah, I know. Thank you.
Are we rolling?
Yes.
Oh.
So
We're in.
yeah, so we're talking about. So we have our typical. Well, actually, this is an atypical setup. We have a guest on today.
Yep.
Bum, bum, bum. Caleb Belonga. Also, while I'm thinking about it, we would be absolutely remiss if we didn't mention the fact that today is September 11th, and it's the 18th anniversary of that tragic day. And anybody, like, total shout out to anybody who's a first responder. You're way braver than I'll ever be, and especially those who went into the destruction while everyone was running away. So I know a lot of our listeners weren't even alive when that happened, right?
Nope. How old
So-
were you? What, 2?
I was 1.
1?
Yeah.
Gosh. How old were you?
You don't want to know.
Like 5?
7.
7.
Same thing, right?
How old were you?
I was a sophomore in college.
Oh, wow.
Why are you laughing?
No reason.
You say that's cute.
Yeah, that's cute. That's
You
good.
know, it's interesting because my grandmother, my dad's mom, I remember her telling me about Pearl Harbor happened when she was a sophomore in college, and yeah, so the way that happened was they filed. She was at the University of Tulsa, and they filed all of them into the gymnasium, and all the students, and then they turned on the radio, and there was FDR, who was announcing that America just got attacked, and that we are going to respond. We're going to war. The girls were crying, and they had army recruiters there, and there were boys that were enlisting on the spot. And I remember hearing that, going, "That is the wildest thing I've ever heard," and I didn't really quite get it. And then when I was a sophomore in college, 9/11 happened. And,
Did the same thing basically happen? Or not really?
Well, essentially, I mean, we didn't hear about it in on the radio. I remember watching it on the TV, having breakfast. We would go to solfege class, and then we had a tradition of going and getting breakfast sandwiches. And so I was watching this big screen TV with one of the smoking towers. I saw the second plane hit the other tower. I was watching people jump out of the top of buildings because the smoke was so crazy that they were just delirious, and they were jumping out of a skyscraper just to get away from the smoke.
Right.
Wow.
And then watch the towers fell, and it was the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
I can't even imagine like the mental zone that you would be in watching that happen live.
It was pretty shocking.
I remember I think I was still in private school at the time. I was a first grader, and I just like people. I remember people just being a little bit on edge, but I remember not really understanding why. But man, I can imagine like being 20 or so.
Yep.
and just watching it on TV. That's just wild
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah, we had some dummy did a bomb scare at the school that day because I guess they thought it would be funny or something. And the president of the college he took that as seriously as he could. And so he filed all of us into the rec center, into the gymnasium, which now that starts to look like my grandmother's story, and lets us know that what's going on. And said, he said, first of all, I've called the FBI. They're going around the campus and they're going to search around. If we find anything, we're going to take care of it. And if we find out who did that bomb scare, you're going to jail.
Right.
Today is the worst day possible to do something like that.
Right.
And there were girls in the gymnasium that were crying, and there was an army recruiter there.
Yeah. I can imagine why.
And I watched several of my friends enlist that day.
Well, if you just talk about the emotional aspect of it, like if you, it's an interesting thing to talk about in today's world because, like, Caleb, you may be able to speak on this, but we grew. I feel like I grew up in a time when it was like saying that America is a great country is not something that's controversial, and no matter what side of the aisle you're on, I think we can agree that it's sort of a controversial thing to say. Because if you say that to somebody, I know to you and I, it's like not that controversial, but some people, I've talked with I've had conversations with people on campuses and stuff like that at U of H and the time that I spent at UNT, where people are like, America's not great. America was built on the backs of this, that, and the other, and they'll kind of start to say stuff like that, which I'd never heard about. I never even heard of before.
Yeah,
I guess this new kind of wave of where politics is going started. So, but the point that I'm trying to make is that back in 9/11, like when 9/11 happened, it was like, this is a thing where all Americans, left, right, center, are going to come together and go, this is bad, and we need to unite, and we need to do something about this.
the most unifying day of my life in this country was 9/12, 2001.
Right.
And that Sunday, because we were having it on a Tuesday, that Sunday was the biggest church attendance maybe in American history.
Dude,
I bet.
I did not even think about that. That's a great point, too.
Everyone went to church that Sunday.
So yeah, if you know a first responder, thank them because they do a job that, by the way, they don't get paid very much at all.
Yeah.
And then if you think a guy that I listen to pretty regularly was mentioning this, he goes, if you think that first responders do it for the health benefits,
right,
then you're wrong, right? So
right.
Anyways, we've got, like I said earlier, we've got Caleb on the podcast. We're super, super excited to have him. So
Thanks for having me.
let's have Caleb sort of explain who you are, where you're from, give yourself like a little bit like an interview backstory.
Interview backstory.
So if someone were to ask you, who are you and where did you come from?
This is fresh on my mind though, because just having transferred to UNT, everybody's asking that.
Yeah,
Right.
So
exactly.
this is not.
So you should be good at this.
Yes, exactly. So I'll be flawless. Well, yes, like they said, my name is Caleb. Caleb Belonga.
It's not Belonga.
No, or baloney, or whatever else you come up with. But I'm sure someone else is.
Dang, missed opportunity. I could have called you Baloney Head the whole time you were in high school. So anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so like I said, my name is Caleb Belonga. I am a current sophomore at the University of North Texas, and I'm studying music education. I just transferred from Oklahoma State, where I was also a music major, and and so I'm just kind of working through my music.
What
School,
caused you to transfer schools?
So when I went to OSU, there was a specific trumpet professor there that I really, really enjoyed. Who was just a phenomenal teacher, phenomenal
You can name him if you want.
Yeah, Dr. Ryan Gardner. He took a job at the University of Colorado in Boulder. It was just a really, really good move for him, and so
Beautiful place up there. Have you ever been to the campus of UC Boulder?
No, I've never been to
Dude,
Boulder.
it is incredible. It's like being in the Twilight Zone. You're on campus and there's just this mountain that is right there.
I hear that a lot of the
incredible.
buildings have rock climbing walls on them, on the campus.
I haven't heard
on
that.
the buildings.
Yeah.
On the actual building?
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Sounds like a liability.
Now, that could be completely wrong, but that's what I've heard.
I know a lot of the buildings like look like they've been made of stone though. It has a really cool look.
Dude, it's incredible. If you ever have an opportunity to go, it's just north of Denver.
Yeah, it is.
There's a lot of places. If you just go to Denver, there's a lot of places to go to. So, anyway, so he went off to UC Boulder.
Yes.
And that sort of, I guess, if Calc moved away from U of H or Michael Sachs moved away from, is it Cleveland or is it Cincinnati? I always get Cleveland. And Cincinnati mixed up.
Cleveland rocks.
What?
Cleveland rocks.
Is that like a thing?
You never saw the Drew Carey show? Oh my gosh, how old am I?
Sounds cute.
We've already talked about like your age. He was one.
Thing?
I was 7. You're
I
gonna
was-
have to wait
and
till
I was
Ulster gets on the
20.
podcast. You have to wait till Ulster gets on the podcast so you can feel it.
Finally, we get someone older than me.
Yeah, it was amazing. We found them. So so after that you went to UNT to study with who?
I currently study with Dr. Raquel Samayoa. She is in her second year as assistant professor there. So she's one of the 3 trumpet professors.
So who's the primary there?
The primary, I believe he's the head of the brass division. His name's John Holt.
He plays in the Dallas Opera.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
It's
then
a combination of a couple prosper people. John Holt. Has that
You're like all prosper all the time, aren't you?
I love this. Okay, yeah. Yes, to answer your question. Cool Eagles.
And then the third professor there is Caleb Hudson, actually, of the Canadian Brass.
Really? That's who we try to get for the brass camp, but he's too good for us. Nah, I'm just kidding. He's busy.
He was on tour in Germany.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I could have emailed him back and said, well, you need to fly back to Prosper, Texas to go to our camp.
Dude, he's a monster trumpet player, man. He's one of those guys. He's like, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name. All I can think of is Oystein Bodsvik, but he's a tuba player. Who's the first trumpet player, so to speak? Matthias Hofs.
Oh, yeah.
You listen to Matthias Hofs play, and
He's
you're
disgustingly good.
There's nothing wrong with you as a human being.
By the way,
I can just tell by the way you play.
I think Matthias Hofs is a Bach artist.
Oh my goodness! I just totally made the connection that you just made.
He's coming out with a new album, by the way.
Yes.
Sounds really good.
Facebook ads did a good job with that one.
Yeah.
'Cause I saw,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Those are been awesome ads.
Yeah.
So now that you see how long it just takes to get through your bio with us, you say one thing and we're like, yeah, we know that.
Yeah.
So, anyways, so you're off at UNT now studying. So let's get some. What do you like about UNT? What do you miss about Oklahoma State? Is there anything in particular?
I really enjoyed both as I've gotten there. It's been a different transition for sure being at UNT. UNT, as far as music schools go, just one of those huge schools where there's just so many people there. It just seems like you're not in a typical, obviously not a conservatory feel, not like a regular music school feel like I'm assuming at U of H was. And
more or less. I mean, we didn't have the numbers that you guys had, but it always kind of felt like a school of music,
Yeah, big.
Sure.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the kind of the underlying factor of that is how many education students do you have, because
Yeah, many times.
Yeah, because at conservatories, I feel like we would go to Rice, it was like there were 6 people in the studio max.
Yeah, we had 8
Right.
at CIM. That was the number we hit every year.
I think we had 24 when I was there, about, and probably 20 of them were ed majors. And of that 20, 10 of them were getting their ed degree as like a fallback, which meant that they weren't practicing very much. So.
I can't stand that. That is like the biggest pet peeve. The fallback. I'm doing this because I'm pretty sure I'm going to fail at life otherwise.
That's a great way to
simply put it.
Yeah, I mean, I
Simply
tell people all the time because they'll say they want a major music education. I go, okay, great. Why? And the correct answer is I want to teach music.
Right.
The incorrect answer is I like music and I do that as a fallback. And what that means is that we're going to produce teachers that don't want to teach. And and that's like the last thing we want is burnt out teachers that are burnt out before they start.
Right. I was trying to think of an analogy for another job, but I think that in another job or another field, I think in any field, if you get a job where, like, you've got the degree, this is where people get into a trap, by the way. You get the degree, you get the job, you get the health benefits, you settle down, you get married, you have kids. You're stuck, dude. Like, you're not going anywhere when you have that one degree. Now, I'm sure there are examples of, like, oh, my cousin had this degree and blah blah blah, and he switched over to this. That's great, but that's a total anomaly. That's when you. I think when the best example is when you go to region contests, and there are the people, like, it's great to talk to John at region contests because he always just carries himself so well, and Tanner Smith at Wakeland is another good example of guys that just look like they're with it, they know what they're doing, and then you see other folks who obviously shall go nameless,
right,
that just look like they are miserable.
Yeah.
And the question that I always want to ask them is like, why do you do this to yourself?
Right.
You don't have to.
Yeah.
Like, there are plenty of music educators. You don't have to do this to yourself.
Well, plus, I mean, then there's the whole thing of, like, you're teaching and affecting children's lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for the better or the worse. And my gosh. Anyway, we've gotten a little off course from Caleb's question, but that drives me nuts. The whole, like, fallback.
Yeah, well, I think it's important too. I mean, you got to think it's each one of us we're impacted by different music teachers, and I'm sure we all see how involved and how dedicated they were.
Mm-hmm.
We were each inspired by different people. And you got to think it's like these people who are going into this degree seeing it as a fallback. It's like, are you really dedicated to what you're doing?
You can't even inspire yourself.
Exactly.
How are you supposed to inspire?
That's a great point.
That is a wonderful point. So that being said,
yes, my point was wonderful.
it really was.
Thank you.
So for you, obviously, Attaway was one of those guys.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Who else? This is going to sound like I'm trying to get. Don't say me. If you say me, I'm going to be like, nope. Who else is there? Is there anybody else in just your high school music career? In particular, I want you to talk about when Prosper went from small town Prosper, maybe like your 6th grade year, to what it was today. Well, I'd like to just talk about the evolution of that, because one of the things that we're looking forward to is having John on the podcast on Friday. Yeah. And talking to him about the same question. So what was your experience like whenever you went from a 6th grader in Prosper, when it was like actually a town, to where it is now?
So actually, 6th grade, I was actually homeschooled up until 6th grade. And so I didn't have any musical background except in piano.
Okay.
And then 7th and 8th grade, I was at a private school. And then 9th grade was my first year at Prosper.
Okay.
So
interesting. I didn't know that. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Well. Yeah.
I mean, I taught him for years, so that's one of the things you cover.
I mean, hopefully.
Yeah, you get to, at least I try to get to know my students.
Nope, I just turn on the metronome. I go play it. Boo! I just boo at people their first lesson. I go, boo! You're bad.
Wow. Okay, I'll keep these tips.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. He's like writing them down. He's like, okay, got it. Boo at the children.
Yeah. So my first year was my 9th grade year. I believe that was 2014, and that was actually the first year that John Alshern was the head director. I believe that was the first year you came.
Yeah, we came over together.
Okay, yeah. And so that was the first year that John and the two other gentlemen who started the new Prosper band, I guess, were there. It was a totally different program than when I see it now. Just being back and being a marching technician for them it's totally different.
In what ways?
Well, I mean, first off, it's a lot bigger. It was definitely a smaller band back then. There are a lot of kids that they didn't really care. There wasn't a sense of
when you're talking about when your freshman year.
My freshman year, yes. And even still in my sophomore year, there are a lot of the older kids who are getting out of that era of the old band directors and weren't really bought into what John Ostrom was doing, and I mean, they just didn't know him and such, and so it was just a whole different vibe of getting things done and musical and excellence in marching and such. It was just totally different.
Yeah.
It's like you had a purpose all of a sudden of being in band. It wasn't just like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
I just got bit by a mosquito.
When you did that, like the sound went down in this ear.
Oh, is that right?
Now it's back.
Oh,
What'd you do? Did you hit it?
I got bit by something.
Did you
And then I
get?
slapped it.
Did you hit like a cord?
I don't know. All I was focused on was that bug, man, and now it's dead.
That's cute.
So, the running theme of the day: all things are cute. Thank you for setting that theme, by the way, sir.
Lisa Hummel got offended by that. She had these little
Really?
this dye. Well, she wasn't offended, but
It's probably just you, honestly. Like,
probably. But it had notes on there, and you'd roll the die, and I think you had to play that scale.
Okay.
A little game. And so she said, "What do you think of this?" And I said, "Well, that's cute." And she was like, "Cute?" I was like, "Cute's a positive word."
not the way you say
And
it.
that's the way she said. That's exactly what she said.
Not the way you say it, buddy. No, it's fine. So the reason why we have you on, and besides the fact that you're an influential guy and people, I think, generally like you, I've never heard anybody be like, "Oh, Caleb, I hate that guy."
I don't think I have.
I don't think I have either. So we want to ask you, so you've had several questions for us, and you're kind of, basically, you're on the path that I guess most of the people who are listening to us are kind of on, because nobody who doesn't have some kind of interest in music as a lifestyle or as a career or a potential career, I think nobody who doesn't have that would listen to us.
I don't know.
Maybe there's some kids. I don't know.
I've got 50 Covenant students that have an interest at least, and
Well, a very real thing that people deal with all the time, and we're going to speak to the point specifically, just excuse me, about music as a career, is you're going through your degree right now. You are completely in the water.
Yeah.
So, and you have several questions for us that we'd like to just answer. If you remember the question, I mean, you had been asking me a couple questions. We've sat down over lunch.
Yeah.
Before, you've asked me about stuff like health insurance and stuff like that. I think it's great
Sure.
questions that people probably don't know the answers to. So
Right.
if you can just recall those questions, and we'll fire at them as best as we can,
Yeah.
and we'll go from there.
Well, I'm guessing a good place to start would be maybe just talking about the lifestyle of what y'all do as a private teacher. Just maybe like your day to day and as private teaching, maybe your schedules and such.
Well,
you want to take that, or you want me to?
you can start.
Well, I get up early, and I mean, I try to hit the practice room at 6 a.m. and start my warm up. I do find that the older I get, the more I need to practice, and the less time I have to do it. And so, excuse me. John Wooden. Do you know that name? He was the head basketball coach of the UCLA, I think, or USC. I think it's UCLA.
I have heard that, actually,
And he's like one of the gurus of success that people talk about. He used to talk about make every day your masterpiece. And so I kind of go into it with that in mind. Just this, I have this day in front of me, and I want every second of it to count. But so that means that I fill it with practicing and then planning for future days and future weeks. But I like yesterday taught a bunch of lessons in the morning. Drove down to Covenant where I do classes for middle schoolers. Went back up to Prosper, finished the day. Went back down to Covenant for Meet the Teacher. Monday, actually ended the day at Collin College and did a class there. And then just every moment I have that I can fill in with practicing, I do. So that's basically my day. It's just I pack it as tightly as I can, but I also know that there's only so tight that I can make it and still be an artist.
Okay.
Right.
You know, because if I don't have the instrument on my face doing the right things every day, I'm not as good of a teacher. I mean, that's just a reality. I find that I'm a better trumpet teacher when I play better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just to that real quick, and this kind of goes back to the discussion of having like music education as a backup and not really caring about your instrument and whatnot. Something that Dr. Ryan Gardner at OSU, when I was there, he would always tell me is, he said, Caleb, if you want to teach the trumpet or just teach music in general, you got to play it. I mean, you got to know your instrument.
Yeah, you got to be in it.
Obviously, I mean, for your situation, and I would argue even for band directors' situation, if they're not professionally playing, all the time, I think they still should keep up their chops somewhat and be able to maintain a good practice schedule. And
and for some people, their instrument is their baton, and that's okay.
Right.
I think probably the most important thing is just making sure that you keep practice a part of your life.
Yeah.
So that your skills stay as high as possible.
So I'm going to judge it real quick because I think that I agree 100% with what you guys were saying. I would just add that for some people, I think that some people get so high up into the field where their responsibilities are so great. My only must for a band director is at least at one time you were really good at your instrument.
Right.
You know what I mean? You don't have to be incredible now. And I'm speaking from a different situation because Brian Kalk got focal dystonia. So he can't play trombone as well as he could have whenever he was, winning runner-up in the Chicago Symphony and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But he can still teach the snot out of trombone.
Right.
The point that I was making is I think if you can play, I don't understand why you wouldn't play. If you genuinely like it.
Right.
But I don't think you necessarily have to be great at your instrument at this moment right now. I think at one time, if you were, a total awesome player, I think that'll do because at least you knew how to get to that point at one time in your life. I
do think that there still is an element of practice, and for some people, practice takes many different forms. Because you're right. I mean, I have seen teachers that they've had. Well, I had a. I don't want to be too transparent. I had a teacher before that wasn't a great trumpet player at the time.
So band director or private lesson?
This is a private teacher.
Got it.
Now, he had been in the New York Philharmonic at one point. And so...
okay.
Yeah. But he was older.
Phil Smith is pretty good, man, from what I've heard.
Yeah, it wasn't Phil Smith. It wasn't Phil Smith. But, he was older, and his playing was starting to slip. And that's just kind of a reality. And he would kind of get into shape at some points of his life, and then other times of his life he would just be out of shape. But he was constantly pursuing the field in some way. He was listening to stuff. He was studying scores. He was reading books. And so I think that also... I think that fueled his teaching as well. So I mean, and I would put that a part of practicing too. You're constantly advancing yourself in your craft in some level.
It's really easy to tell that, by the way, when your teacher is in it and with it and like interested in what they're doing. I think that's one of the things that I would like to think that's one of the things that draws kids to us as teachers is that we look like we enjoy what we do.
Right.
So in your musical endeavors, at least look like you. Or if you're like my sister, if you're an interior designer, just be enthusiastic, right?
Right.
Same thing that we tell all of our guys in the trash industry. Don't look like you're a trash guy.
You know what the word enthusiasm means?
No.
It has Greek word roots to it. And it's entheos. It means God within.
What?
God within. So
we need to get you a microphone so you can just drop it.
But yeah, so now, obviously not everyone believes in God, and you can still be enthusiastic, but what it means that you have a spirit about you that is
that totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. Wow. I think I'm going to, that's my number one takeaway so far. I'm just going to tell everybody I see today that.
You're welcome.
Hey, you.
Is God within you?
Why are you so enthusiastic?
That's
Dang, girl, is God within you? Because you're enthusiastic.
Dang, girl.
Do you want to be cute?
All right, so
What is your typical day look like?
so my typical day, and I'm going to take the opportunity to juxtapose it with a music educator.
Okay.
That is a band director.
Okay.
Not a private lessons teacher. So, and I'm proud to say that one of my best friends is Spencer Smith, and we talk every day. So he gets to the school about the same time that I do, and when I say the school, it's a different school.
Right.
Right. That's one of the main differences, and honestly, it's one of the things I like is that I'm not at the same school every day for 8,
Right.
9, 10 hours. We get to school about the same time, about 7 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes 6:30, sometimes a little earlier. And I will teach. Typically, what I like to do, a lot of teachers will stack as much as they can. Like if they can teach at X school for 9 hours straight, I'm thinking about like Jung Moo Lee. These guys who teach like 27 lessons in a day.
Right.
Because that's normal.
I don't even
It's
comprehend.
like I made $4,000 today. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go have some Korean barbecue now.
Right.
So
A lot of Korean barbecue.
yeah. So anyway, so I like to kind of hop around because living in places, between Frisco and Prosper, I think there are 200,000-ish people as far as population numbers go. So you can go, I can go to one school and then hop 2 blocks over and then go to another school. So I like to teach about 3 to 4. No, let me reverse. So Mondays I'm at Prosper all day long, and then I think I teach like 2 lessons at Reynolds, and then I come back. But every other day, I'll teach like 3 lessons at one school, and then I'll hop over to another school with 3 lessons, and then I'll have another, and I'll do that about 5 times, and that way I can get my 15 lessons in, which I think is a typical day. Think back to when you weren't at Covenant, right?
Right. I try to do like minimum 12.
Yeah, because that'll get you to your 60 per week.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So I like to hop around because I like working really hard in spurts and then taking the drive to just kind of relax a little bit, which I see that as a luxury.
Yeah.
Because I don't think people. I know people at corporate offices don't get to do that. They're go all the time.
There's absolute studies on taking breaks throughout the day and getting outside in the nature and how that's very rejuvenating. And I value that a lot.
So that's one thing that Spencer doesn't get to do. And again, we're speaking to personalities here. So if you don't care about that, you don't care about that. But I think it's one thing that if you don't think about it, it doesn't really cross your mind. And then during marching season, he's at the school until about 9 o'clock, 9:30. On football nights, it's about midnight or later, and we are not. So
Right.
As marching technicians, we can just leave. You know what I mean? Like when the kids get back, we're not responsible for making sure that little Johnny, whose parents forgot about him, gets home.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, it's sad. Come on, Johnny's parents.
Poor little Johnny.
So that's I hop around. I like to hop around between. I've almost got it down to a science where I do 3 here, 3 here, 3 here, 3 here, 3 here. So I'm always on the go, and that way, as a side point, if I ever need to call some of our customers, or if I ever need to talk to some of my other business partners, I can give them phone calls and take phone calls during those drives between schools, which is really, really nice. So I'm doing about 75 a week now, which again, it's just math, and it's not. People try to break it down by the half hour. It's not really half hours. If you're teaching a lesson at Reynolds, those are 23 minutes, and I have a lot of those.
Yeah.
Any middle school lesson is going to be 22 to 23 minutes, so it's not that much. It's like 32, 33 hours a week.
Yeah.
Plus
it's
drive
solid. That's a solid schedule.
Yeah.
And then you add in everything else that, is involved with teaching,
Right.
which, it's the planning and communication side is not as high in what we do as like with a classroom teacher. I mean, they have a lot of teaching responsibilities that are not teaching.
Right.
And we have less of that, but still some. I mean, you still got to communicate, answer emails, and plan your
What
calendar.
do your email numbers look like on a daily basis?
As far as how many I receive,
Yeah, I mean, just generally, like if you did not check your email or your phone at all in a given day, how many would you have?
including spam,
No. Why would you include spam?
no.
Just like strictly trumpet business.
4?
Yeah, I would say like 2 to 3.
Yeah.
which is so nice.
Yeah.
Because all I hear from music educators is, I would love to teach music, but my email.
Right. Yeah, and now that depends on the part of the year. The beginning of the school year, it could be like 20 and at 20, 25, 30 a day.
Is that still lasting for you right now?
No. By this point, we're done with that. But it's all it's the new parents who are like, hey, I'd like lessons for my kids, or hey, do you know your schedule for the school year? And I don't, and so
Yeah. While we're on the, sorry, go ahead.
oh, I just feel I want to be like an ostrich at that point of the year and just hide my head in the sand.
I feel like as a private lessons teacher, that this August part of the year, just getting it set up is almost so. So Brahms called Beethoven the giant walking behind me. I feel like getting your schedule set up is the August giant walking behind me, because it's like every year it's like, man, I gotta do
It's a
this.
very daunting task.
You got to get everything organized and get all the parents happy and get everybody just satisfied with where their spot is.
But then once it's done, it's done.
It's a beautiful thing once it's done. But you can just take that whole, especially nowadays when you have stuff like My Music Staff, which is incredible. You can just take your whole schedule and just copy it. So
Yeah.
it makes life a lot easier, which is something that this old fart here had to deal with. Wow. Remember when you used to go to Taco Bueno across the street from LD Bell High School?
Oh, gosh, I spent so many hours in Taco Bueno because they had free Wi-Fi, and it was just right across the street from the school.
That's why you were in
And they have tacos.
muchachos.
Yeah.
Muchachos.
I had a lot of meals there. But yeah, and when I was teaching Richardson and Plano and all these places, it's been hours just sending invoices. And so I'd go onto PayPal, and there's an invoice feature there, and I just I mean, it's the most mundane, boring thing ever. And then to think even before that, I remember my private teachers when I was in school sent out paper invoices.
Good Lord.
So they would
things.
print it out on the computer, stuff it in an envelope,
It's amazing
mail
they
it
ever
to
made
you.
it. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And that was hard. I mean, that was labor intensive. And now that you can just have an automatic invoice program that just you don't even think about it, it tracks everything. Oh, that is maybe the greatest invention of all private teaching.
Before sliced bread, even better than sliced bread.
I mean,
think so.
I honestly I can't think of another thing that helps more than that. Maybe the metronome. I mean, we're talking like this is like
If you use it, by the way, kids.
impactful, right?
You should.
Right.
So Caleb, you, I think it's safe to say that your situation is close to my heart, because you are in getting a music ed degree right now.
Yes.
But there are thoughts, and I think if you're passionate about your instrument, I think this is a thought that you should almost inevitably have, which is, do I want to do music education and become a band director, or do I want to become a private lessons teacher and try to be like the Mark Bartons of the world who plays tuba in the Houston Grand Opera and teach for a couple of years and then get a job, right? I think that's a struggle that almost every music education, what would you call it, student would have, should say, like, man, do I really want to go down the band director route? And if you're a performance major, do I want to go down the performance major route? Because I know for me as a performance major, I got a lot of people telling me that I was making a mistake. Directly, they would say, you're going to regret this later. Kind of like a mark my words situation. So
Right.
Talk to us about kind of what you're going through right now, as far as just like just your mental state, as far as you want to pursue music, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So talk to us about what the conflict is going on with you.
Sure.
If there is a conflict. I'm kind of assuming here, but
Yeah. For the longest time, ever since I was inspired just to go into music education, which I would say just from a music educator's standpoint, I was definitely, we didn't quite answer this earlier, but definitely inspired by John Alstron just to go into the music education field, I guess. For the longest time since high school, I think about my junior year maybe, so that's not the longest time, but I did just want to go into band directing, just music education, go that whole route, and just be a band director. As I went through school and, I saw the music education students, I saw the performance students, this thought really came up at OSU, just because my professor was just huge on, like I said, like if you want to teach trumpet, if you want to teach music, you got to be able to play it.
Right.
And I just started to see that, as a music education student, you can still be really good at your instrument. Like you can still find the time to practice. It's just that people choose not to. I think that a lot of music education students.
It's a good choice of words, by the way. They choose not to.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times they get caught in doing other things, and my mindset really is that if you're in school, like take advantage of everything. Like take advantage of your music education classes, take advantage of your lessons. I mean, you're studying with phenomenal professors. Hopefully, that you should be pursuing excellence, in your classes and just with your playing. And so, just what I started to see is that. Yes, absolutely, I could be a band director or a teacher, but I also love playing the trumpet as well. And I find a lot of enjoyment just being able to, make a sound and, a beautiful sound. I can, of course, but
Right.
and it's very fun's a very basic word. I guess fulfilling in a way.
Right.
Meaningful.
Meaningful. Mm-hmm. And I also know that I was, inspired by you just as in a private teacher's standpoint, just one-on-one, just musically. I know I was initially inspired trumpet-wise that way. And so when I started to look at the band directors' just schedules and in the fall, it's just crazy. Like I know you and I talked about at lunch, just the crazy hours that they put in the fall, and I experienced it just being able to watch my band directors in high school,
Right.
just how many hours they put in, and I do believe I could put my all into it if that's what I end up doing. But I know that I definitely want to get married and have a family and such, and I think one of the things that's huge for me is that. That I want to be able to be home and have time on nights, and just when I can to be able to spend, with those people that I, want to build into and such. And I see it as being really tough as a band director to do that.
Right.
And also another big thing is that, I want to have just a huge impact. One of the books I'm reading, The Savvy Music Teacher, which was recommended by you, it talks about, I think one of the first things it talks about is impact over income. And it's just talking about the kind of impact that private lesson teachers, the book's about private teaching.
I'm going to interject. I would say
Yeah.
impact equals income.
Yeah, that's probably so.
Yeah, I think it addresses that too, probably.
I don't know that the equation works out so well, I think. Anyway, just a thought.
Yeah.
Right.
So you were saying that you're saying impact over income?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think on a private teacher setting, I've noticed that you can have a huge impact on kids just one-on-one. I'm sure y'all could talk to this too. Just, you're one-on-one with a student 30 minutes to an hour each week.
For years.
For years, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And as I thought about it, I was like, you're with me since I believe my sophomore year of high school, and you saw me grow musically and as a person, and you were the main person who helped me prepare for and get into college. And it's like,
Right.
it's just nuts that someone like you're just coming alongside you. If you think about it, it's just kind of like someone who's just really helping you along the way and just kind of guiding you to get to the point where you take the next step into your career.
Yeah.
And so I think that band directors have an enormous amount of impact. I mean, I'm not going to say that they don't. Obviously, John Alston and the other band directors at Prosser High School definitely did have that on me in high school. But I think I really would enjoy the impact that you can have on a student in the one-on-one setting.
Right. Yep.
Just musically and as a person, it just seems like a very more meaningful, I guess, intimate in a way, way of being impactful.
Yeah, it's it's different. As far as the calendar and the schedule goes, I can say that yes, there's a lot of late nights in the fall for a band director. Now that you also get holidays off.
That's true.
I mean, you don't get as much as a normal teacher. Like a normal classroom teacher, they can take the entire summer off.
Yeah, very true.
And as a band director, typically you don't. I mean, you have summer band, and you also are probably up there doing some work in preparation for that. Now, with that said, you're also probably not there every day in the summer. I mean, you can't. You do get a summer,
Right.
Unless you're someone like Brandon who just took the new job and he had a lot of catch up to do. He was there every day, most every day.
I don't know that that's going to be the same next summer, though, right?
I would be
That's
surprised.
The point you're making, yeah.
And as opposed to a private teacher where you're there every summer, every day in the summer, at least as you can, because that's how you make money.
Right.
Right.
So there, it's just spurts of energy. Just depends on how you distribute it. Being a classroom teacher, I think it's more dynamic because you're in front of a group. And you kind of put on a show in a way. And so the boredom aspect is not as much there when you're in front of a group, I think. And in some ways, that's psychologically a little easier. I know maybe teachers don't want me to say that. I think being a classroom teacher is a piece of cake. Being a private lesson teacher,
I would absolutely agree with that, by the way.
Yeah.
I think I love being in. I think part of it's the variety.
Yeah.
Is, okay, I'm going to teach, on my Thursdays, I teach 6 or 7 lessons, and then I go teach with Mr. Ani at Hayes.
Right.
In front of a class.
Right.
So it kind of shifts the perception of time.
Yeah.
I interrupted you. Sorry.
Well, the other side of it is that private lessons, you're mentoring people, which is very different than just teaching a class. You're actually mentoring.
Right.
And so you're shaping a human being one-on-one. Mm-hmm. However, it can also be boring because, I probably correct people on slurring 30 lessons a week, every week. It's like, hey, you tongue that note.
With the hope that eventually they'll get it.
Half notes are 2 counts.
I think one of the coolest things is doing that for a long time and then not having to do it anymore. It's very cool. I know,
Yeah.
and I say that almost as a joke, but it's not a joke at all. Like one of the best things about coming to a town like Prosper and kind of find my niche here is that I had to take some of the third band kids back when there were only 3 bands. I had to take some of the third band kids, and now they're in the top ensembles. And it's like, man, that's really cool. That's really, really cool.
It seems like,
and you have a huge impact on people one-on-one.
Right. So, anyways, we're just for time's sake.
Yeah.
We've got about 30 minutes left, and we do have a question to answer that you could probably help us out with. So
We're going to go another 30 minutes. Wow, these are long.
Yeah.
This
special edition.
Yeah. This is what happens when you start at 5 a.m. You can just go for like forever.
Dude, we're going to start at 3 a.m. next time.
We're just going to do Joe Rogan style 3-hour podcast.
It's okay. You don't have. It's good. So, anyways, I'm sure you had other questions for us. You asked a great question, which some of our listeners may not know. Band directors don't get health insurance, and that's one of the big things that
band directors don't get health insurance.
Excuse me.
I was about to say
private lessons
since
teachers,
when?
Sorry. Private lessons teachers don't get health insurance, and
right.
that is a kicker. Whether you like it or not, that is a kicker for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. I'm still 25. I pay my mom monthly for insurance,
right?
Just because it's cheaper. I will take on that responsibility here in about 8 or 9 months,
right?
And I'm probably just going to have to go the private healthcare route, and yeah, that's expensive, but so is like a $200,000 surgery. So, can you talk to this point, because you have a whole family and all that kind of stuff? So, how do you go about getting health insurance?
Well, health insurance sucks.
Agreed. I think all insurance sucks, by the way.
Right. There is a bit of a scam on all insurance, in that you're paying for potential need, and when you don't need it, it is a losing proposition with money. But you're taking away the gamble in your life. That's why you do the insurance. And the more family members you have, the more that responsibility is there. So it needs to be done. The health insurance was much easier before Obamacare was passed. I know that maybe that is really controversial and political, but it's also reality. It was cheaper, it was higher quality, and it was easier to get. And now that the Affordable Care Act has been passed, it is less affordable and it's worse care. But that's what we do. But it is an act.
Yep.
So
Agreed.
okay, I need to get out of politics.
Yes.
Now with
Yes, you do.
with that said, so there are multiple routes you can go. You can go on the healthcare.gov marketplace. All plans are the same price. That's actually set by the state, which is part of the reason why it's so expensive is because there's a lot of regulation. I need to get away from politics.
Part 2. All right.
So there's that route. And so theoretically, the less money you make, the cheaper it is for you because subsidies kick in from the government. Now, there is a sweet spot where if you make just enough money not to get subsidies, but you don't make enough that you're uber wealthy, it gets crazy expensive. And that's not wonderful, but that's also reality. So that's one route. You know, if you can get a part-time gig somewhere as like the percussion paraprofessionals for the districts, they get health insurance through the district. That's kind of nice. They're not full time. They can still private teach. they get benefits.
Oh, cool.
Which is pretty sweet. So you know, if you have a part-time gig that can provide that for you, that can do that. The route that my family goes on currently, it's not perfect. In fact, we've had some issues with this too, but as I see it, there's no perfect option here. It kind of all sucks. If I'm going to be completely honest with you.
If there was a perfect option, it would be obvious. Everybody would know about it.
Right. Well, the perfect option is to be employed somewhere and they pay for 100% of your health care.
Sure, that'd be nice.
But that almost doesn't exist
Does that
anymore.
not come out of your check at all? I feel like health insurance comes out of your check.
It does, but if you part of your benefits from a job, they'll pay a percentage of that. And there are companies that pay 100% of your healthcare premium every month.
Really?
Not in education.
Okay. I didn't know that. I thought
Yeah.
because, you know, when I pay my mom, the reason why I pay my mom is because she gets a pretty good chunk taken out of her check.
Right.
I hope so. Maybe I'm just giving her money.
Yeah,
Love you, Mom.
typically though, it's deducted automatically from your check in a traditional job. So anyway, the route that we go is we do a health sharing program. We use Samaritan Ministries. So now there's some restrictions to this. First of all, you've got to be a Christian to do this. I don't think there's any health sharing things that are for people who are not of faith. Maybe there are. I just don't know them. But there's like Liberty Health Share. There's MediShare. That we do Samaritan. There's several.
Interesting.
And what this is basically insurance.
Okay.
But they can't call it insurance. Right. And so it's a community of people. In this scenario, it's a community of Christians that you pay into a big pot every month, and then that money is used to distribute to people as they need. You know, they get a surgery and they need $50,000 for a surgery. Well, that pot helps to go and pay for that.
Do you know how many members there are in each group? Because if the more members, I'd probably
there's
to that one.
100,000. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, and
That's pretty cool.
It's national.
That should work.
It seems to.
Have you ever heard of situations where you run into where they were just like, "Oh, sorry, we don't have $100,000."
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. It seems to be one of those scenarios where that could be the case.
You would
it is odd because my wife pays the bills, but I think the way that works is that you, instead of paying the Samaritan, you actually pay a person, and so through the company. Okay. And so that's like their medical reimbursement. So anyway, it's a little different. Typically, because it's faith-based, it's very restrictive, and it has to do with their values as a company, and sometimes those values don't line up with yours. For example, when we had our last kid, one of the things that many people like to do is they like to do DNA tests when they're still in utero. And that is to make sure that they're healthy. And if they're not, maybe you can treat it before they're born. Well, some people believe that you shouldn't do that because if you find out that your kid's not very healthy, maybe you'll just abort them.
Right.
And so if that doesn't line up with the values of the company, they won't pay for that. And so then you're like, well, okay, crud. The one that we have, they don't do vaccines. And so that's kind of a pain in the tushy because we have to pay for vaccines out of pocket. Now, we figured out how to do that. You go to the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, and there's an office in Denton. And so you wait there and you get your shots, and it's actually not all that expensive. And it's way cheaper to do that than it is to go through the doctor, which is silly too.
Yeah, exactly.
The whole thing is silly. The medical industry is the silliest and stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. When we did our C-section, we went and talked to the finance people before the procedure was ever done. And we said, what is this going to cost? Because I don't know if we had this current plan or if we were with a different company, because we were also with MediShare. But we were advised to go in as cash, and then we would get reimbursed from the medical company, the insurance, the sharing company.
Yeah.
And so the hospital told us that it was going to be like $16,000 normally to do a C-section, unless you paid cash, and then it was $10,000.
How in the world?
So what that tells me is that the procedure is actually $10,000, but when you have insurance, they bill the insurance for $16,000, which in my mind, now I'm just a musician, but that's fraud. That's insurance fraud.
But the point is who's gonna say you can't do that?
They're open about it. It's amazing. Right. I mean, they will actually tell you it's this, except if you're insured, it's that. Now you don't pay that insurance thing. The company pays for that.
Right.
But it's crazy, and we wonder why insurance is so expensive. I mean, for real. My wife, and I'm totally getting off topic, but you brought it up, so it's your fault. My wife had a procedure done where she had a plantar fascia issue with her foot.
Yep.
Okay, so it was that bottom tendon, and so she went to a podiatrist to look at her foot, and went through all that, and then we got the invoice, and she was back when she was working, so it went through traditional insurance. And we got the bill from the doctor, and it included there was a brain scan on there. She went to a podiatrist. They look at your feet, but there was something about a brain scan. And so she called the insurance company and said, they checked out my feet. There was no brain scan here.
Right.
And the insurance company said, well, thanks for letting us know. We probably won't do anything about it.
Well, just if you want to get just like freaked out, go to the ER for 3 or 4 days and just look at the bill that you get for 3 or 4 days.
Like, yeah.
My grandpa was in the ER for like a week and a half. It was like $200,000.
Yeah.
It's just like, how in the world do you come up with that number and then put it out there for all to see and then go, yeah, what's wrong with that? $200,000?
The weekend
30 grand a day?
The weekend before I went to New York City to audition for grad school. I was auditioning at Juilliard and the Manhattan School of Music. It was the Sunday before. I was in a practice room at Baldwin Wallace, and I think in my left ear, I felt a pain in my ear, and I basically was freaked out because I was like, oh my gosh, I just got an ear infection. I hadn't gotten an ear infection since I was like 8. And I was getting it the weekend before my New York City auditions, and so I called up my parents. I said, hey, I need to go to the ER because I want to get this taken care of now. And so that Sunday night I went to the ER local and I waited for an hour and a half. Finally, I was taken into the examination area. A doctor came in and said, "Hey, what seems to be the issue?" I said, "I have an ear infection." And she takes out her little ear looky thing. She looks at my ear and goes, "Yep, I'll write a prescription for you." And I was in and out of the actual like examination in 15 minutes. It was $800.
That makes sense.
$800, and it didn't include the drugs. It was just she looked at my ear, said, "Yep, you have an ear infection. Here's your prescription." It was $800.
So
that
I'm getting depressed. Can we stop talking about this? Okay,
it's Caleb's fault. He brought it up.
Right, yeah.
The moral of the story is that medical coverage sucks. It's just one of the things as a society. Until things get fixed, we have to kind of bite the bullet and just you make enough money so that you cover it.
According to the data gathered by eHealth, the average health insurance cost for single coverage premiums in 2018 was $440 a month.
Yeah.
The cost for families was $1,168 a month.
Right.
So
before 2006, no, 2010, I was paying $98 a month.
For what?
Wow.
Aetna?
It was
United Health
through Aetna, yeah.
Wow, that sucks. Anyway, all right. So no politics.
Well, just a quick question, just to maybe wrap this up. I'm just curious. Do y'all see not having health benefits as an issue with your field, or if you don't have a family right now, or if you do have a family, both sides. Do you see, do you really wish that you maybe had health benefits? Do you think it's a huge con of private teaching?
So I'm obviously going to say no, and the reason being is, hopefully, I marry somebody who is in a career. That's one of your options. Obviously, is like let's say your wife is in a career where she can get health benefits for the family. That's option number one. Option number two is, and this is probably my future route, is just make enough money to where you can afford it.
Right.
Outer
in the problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's those are your two options. And the point that I want to make is that as an issue doesn't outweigh my want to be a private lessons teacher as opposed to a band director.
Yeah.
So I'm not. I think that would be I think that would be the craziest thing in the world. Just to think about it in the reverse, be like, "Hey, why are you a band director? Because health benefits."
Right.
It's like, what?
Right.
You are changing your entire career just to have health benefits. I think that's pretty crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it maybe is the hardest thing, in my opinion, especially when you start to have a family and you need to insure them.
Right.
Now, I will say, looking into the future, as long as things don't get screwed up, there was some legislation that was passed in Washington that allowed people that other than businesses to group together in kind of a private scenario and get group rates for insurance. Which what that means is that there is a potential for maybe the Dallas-Fort Worth area private lesson teachers to group together and go in on a group plan eventually.
That'd be cool.
That would be awesome, because then we don't need to be employed by a company. We can just together go into a plan.
Right.
Now, somehow, or you could do that with your neighborhood. That's what these laws are saying. Now, no one's done that yet, but I'm pretty sure that they just passed that. Is that
a state thing or is that a federal thing?
I think it's a federal.
Very cool. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically what it is. I mean, are the rates determined by the size of the group?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's kind of scary.
Yeah. But that also means that the entire Dallas-Fort Worth area could be in a group.
Right.
And you could have
there's
millions and millions of people in a group, potentially.
So, any other questions that you have? Just generally speaking, I know that we could probably do this for another 2 hours if we had the time.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I would like to get to the routine question, just given how much time we have left.
Okay.
Are you cool with that? So actually, Caleb, funny that you're here. Caleb submitted an artwork. I'm going to put up on the screen. Bam, there it is. Okay.
You have the ability to do that now, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I've had it. It's just it's a lot easier now because I'm using a better interface. But he submitted.
Do you see it? Isn't that an amazing image we just put up?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm going to put it right next to your face. So I
Which
have
side?
the power. So it's a what's the actual name of that image?
So the artwork is entitled "The Scream."
Yeah, that's right. By who?
It's by Edvard Munch, I believe.
Munch.
Munch.
Yep.
Okay.
It's expressionist.
Yes.
Oh, I forgot you know art. Art.
I know stuff.
Art. Yeah. The Scream. That's right. I remember it. So we're going to put the Scream up, but it's a different kind of scream. It's Scream. It's a scream with a trombone on it.
I scream when I see trombones.
Right? You saw it, right? Yeah. That's hilarious. So that's the artwork of the week. We want to start doing a band meme of the week where we have a meme that it's like a voted on, where the kids will vote on a band meme and then we will just react to it like that one guy. So
boy, that was specific.
I don't know his name. He like claps before he says stuff. Do you know what I'm talking about? He's like next something. Someone will tell us who it is. I want to say it's that PewDiePie guy. Maybe it's not PewDiePie. Maybe have you heard about this conflict between this guy named PewDiePie and T-Series?
I mean, I know a PewDiePie because he makes like $100 bajillion a year playing video games.
Yes.
I'd get bored, but
I can't believe that people watch his videos. I cannot believe
that. Just as a side note, the moment that I think my initial I lost faith in humanity moment was when I walked in on my brothers watching people play video games.
Right.
And I remember being like 12, 13, 14 years old. YouTube had just started to become a thing. And I have never had a more confused look on my face. I was like, is this a thing?
Yeah.
Why are you watching him play the video game? The system that you have is off.
Right.
It's off.
It's right there.
It's right there. You can do that. The game that he's playing is in the console right now. Well, he's showing us how to do. Why don't you just figure it out yourself?
Right. Right.
What?
It's actually such a big thing right now. Like I think on like Twitch and other things that there are these guys. I mean, just streamers like PewDiePie. I think who just play games. Like I think it's like for hours and hours, like into the night or just way into the morning, and people just watch and they get money.
Make a lot of money.
Yeah, and that's all they do. But like it seems like a really like a growing thing now. People are streamers and
there are YouTubers now that all they do is unwrap toys, unbox new toys.
I've heard of that.
And children will watch
like
them
7-year-old who makes
unwrap a
$22
toy.
million a year.
It's like I don't understand this.
I mean, I understand. Like, they got to do reviews on this stuff, right? Like they talk about it and they talk about their feelings about how they feel when they unwrap it and stuff like that.
Right.
I can sort of understand that. I just don't get. I'm watching you play a video game. Like video games to me, obviously, like we talked about this a ton, is a waste of time. But that is like waste of time to the 10th degree.
That's true. That's true. I would rather you waste your time than waste your time wasting your time.
It's the equivalent of like when you're watching reality TV shows. Like just think about that. You are spending your life watching. You have a reality.
Right.
Why don't you live that one?
Right.
Make it interesting. Do something you're watching somebody else live their life. How sad is that?
Yeah.
What level of suck have you reached with your life to where you are so terrible and awful and bored you can't entertain yourself. Right. You have to watch other, and they make billions.
Right.
I'm going to be that guy that's going to have a huge front porch.
The get off my lawn.
The get off my lawn.
Right.
Get off my lawn.
Bathrobe, black socks, and dress shoes, garden hose,
and a little bit of trombone.
Right.
So the question is, full disclosure, this is from my brother, and he's a great guy.
Was that the person you were just slamming for watching videos?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Second.
Simple as that. Yeah.
Hey, man. It's his fault, right? Is that what you say? You point at them and go, it's not my fault. You did it.
Hey, you said that to me.
You brought it up, yeah.
Yeah, you brought it up. So, anyways, he writes, question for the podcast with a semicolon, which is incorrect grammar, but who's judging?
Is this a little brother?
Yes. His little brother.
Or you can slap him.
No, man. Violence is not cool. Yes. So it says last episode, and he actually has the time. He's a dedicated listener. He's one of our 2 dedicated listeners, so thank you.
Man. Caleb's
the other one is my mom.
Oh, okay.
So it says Ben mentions how he regrets not having a consistent morning routine that he did every single weekday. He then goes on to talk about warming up and general band stuff. Now, my question for the both of you, and for you also, Caleb, would you recommend having a specific morning routine for your life in general, even outside of band? And if so, what are some tips for creating a healthy and consistent morning routine? Personally, mine is waking up early, having a nice cup of hot coffee, picking out a good book, and regretting every choice I've made so far. But hey, that's me. You cannot tell that he's my brother at all. And he says, bonus question. That might be the thing. That might be the thing that we're talking about. What are each of your morning routines? It says, John Boy. It says, P.S. I really love what y'all do. I've listened to every episode so far, and it's all quote-unquote S-tier life advice that anyone can benefit from.
What is an S tier?
Do you know what that is?
No.
Okay.
I'm gonna hope.
Wait, say it again.
I'm gonna hope. It says I've listened to every episode so far, and it's all quote unquote S tier life advice that anyone can benefit from. So thank you.
Like dash tier.
No, it just says quote unquote S, like it's capital S in quotations. He'll explain it to me, and then we'll talk about it in the next.
Hopefully, it doesn't mean suck tier.
This is suck tier life advice, or maybe super tier life advice. So the question. So let's keep it quick. We've got about 15 minutes if you want to make your 7 o'clock. And you want to start?
Yeah, I've had lots of morning routines.
So I think that just Adaway is the best morning routine guy I've ever met in my life. So
because I have one.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's simple, but it's true.
So I'm not going to go into the trumpet side because I think that would just bore people. That's very specific to me. I came across the idea of a morning routine by listening to a podcast. There's a guy named Michael Hyatt, and what is his podcast called? It's like Your Best Life Now. It's one of those like motivational podcasts, and so anyway,
it sounds like it. Best Life Now. I don't feel like I'm not going to be motivated after I listen to it.
Doesn't sound demotivating.
Nope.
I want to say it's something like that. Or This Is Your Life. Anyway, it's been a little while since I've listened to it, and I don't think he makes them anymore, but you can still find them on iTunes. But he has one on a morning routine, and so he laid out exactly what his looked like, and so I kind of started to design mine around that. And I've had them where they've been very structured. I've had them where they have not been so structured. I mean, right now I get up and I do some...
At what time?
I get up at 4. And...
like AM?
Yeah.
Kids in the summer are like, I don't know. It's a valid question.
I do share something on our Facebook page for Pursuit of Music, so I just look on that and share.
If you're old enough to have a Facebook,
so that
page,
way,
like it.
Right? So that way, we have the content that's going through constantly, and then I do some study stuff right now. I'm studying classical education as part of my job at Covenant, and so I'm going through an online program for that. So and then I get ready and I leave. Okay. But I've done things where I like down to the minute where I'll get up, I will go and jog, and then I'll come back, and then I've done things where I've meditated in the morning, and that's actually really quite wonderful. Unless you're really tired, then you just fall asleep. But where you just kind of take the moment to just let your mind clear. Yeah. I've done things where I've, as a person of faith, I've prayed. I've done stuff where I've done reading in the morning. I've done journaling in the morning, which is really valuable. Where you just take 15 minutes and you just type everything that's in your head. It could be about your day. It could be about what you'd like your coming day to be. Things that have been bothering you.
Man, if you think Twitter history is bad, that would be terrible to find out.
Right.
Like, local politicians' daily morning journal where he wrote everything he ever thought down.
Right. But yeah, and I found a lot of value to that in short spurts. There does get to be a point where you're like, I have nothing to say, right. and then it's the 15 minutes of just like drudgery. But
do you have a specific place that you do that in the morning, or just kind of?
When I was doing that, it was just on the couch in my living room.
Yeah.
And I would do it on my computer. Right now, we've got a bathroom that's connected to our master bedroom, and so I kind of sit in there and do some work. So that way, I can just, when the time comes where I need to like get ready for the day, I just start getting ready, and I'm right there.
Right.
I think the most important thing about the morning routine is just to be very intentional about what you want to do and how you want to do it, and then also just get your butt up.
Right.
Allow yourself. I am not a morning person, which people just assume because I get up early, I'm a morning person. I'm not. I feel awful when I get up, and I'm not nice. My wife can attest to this.
Take it all out on your trumpet.
She learned it early. Just don't talk to me for a while in the mornings. But if that's the scenario,
that's sort of the point of getting up early, right?
well, yeah, you get that
Time to
out of the way, and so I can be a jerk, and no one's awake, and so I can like take a moment to just slowly wake up, and then I show up to my first commitment of the day, and I'm normal. I'm not a zombie.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's really important. If it's right, if I go ahead.
Yeah, go for it.
You know, I am definitely not perfect in this either. I am actually still trying to figure this out. Just being in college and kind of starting to be on my own as a person. But what I've found out is that, you know, the mornings I think are just a good time to set yourself up for the day in whatever it is that you're doing. You know, specifically, I won't go into details either of trumpet, but, you know, that's something that I'm very involved in since that is my major. And so that's one of the big things that I know I need to set myself up for the entire day, because I'm going to be playing the entire day, probably till late at night. And so, you know, whatever it is, like if you're in sports, you know, you're going to be exercising a lot, or if you're going to be learning and your brain's going to be working a lot, you know, I think the morning is a great time to, you know, like you said, just get out of that state of sleepiness. I mean, everybody when they get up, no one gets up. They wake up, they're like, oh, all right, yeah, let's go. You know, It's like it takes some time to really come to reality and be like, okay, like, yes, now I'm ready. But, you know, it takes some time, just whatever it is that you need to do. You know, for me, it's always I have to do, this is for, you know, just me personally, to wake up and get my mind working, and for trumpet too, so it kind of kills two birds with one stone. It's just breathing and like having a routine of doing just counted breaths and stuff, and just that wakes up my brain a lot. Right. And I know I'm setting myself up just mentally, like I'm waking up, and then obviously for trumpet it helps too, and obviously yeah, and in the morning too, like you said, you pray and stuff as a person of faith, and I think that's a really important thing too, just personally.
It gets your mind right.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And, you know, you're really, just going back to, I think my point is just setting yourself up for the entire day. You don't want to be in a headspace so that when you go to your first thing that you are doing, whether it's class or it's work or practicing or sports or whatnot, like that you're ready to go.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and this, for you musicians that are listening, this is a huge thing too. It's, you know, whatever it is that you approach, if you're playing or if you're practicing, like you just want to be absolutely prepared to just hit the ground running. You don't want to ease into the practicing, because then you're not going to get good practicing done or performing done if you're not ready to go right away. And so, yes, I mean, I would say to the question to be direct, it is, I think, very important to have a consistent routine, because, you know, you got to get ready for the day and just be able to tackle whatever it is you want to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think, just as an initial point to a morning routine, I think it's much like working out, eating right, reading a book every day. Super simple in concept, really hard to do in practice.
Right.
Because how many excuses can you make up for not getting up early, right? I mean,
yeah.
So there's a ton of them. You know, I need my sleep.
Yeah.
Which sometimes I'll say this: I have gotten into morning routines, and I love coming into this office and getting some work done, having my quiet time. There are some days and some nights, and you know this well, I go to bed at like 2 a.m. I don't think it's healthy to go to bed at 2 and then wake up at 4 and then try to. So
Yeah.
And that's a pre-battle, right? Like you need to go to bed a little bit earlier if you're going to do this. For me, I have the excuse, and I don't really see it as an excuse because it's like an actual thing. So I need to be up till about 11 o'clock or midnight every night to make sure that my guys get home.
Right.
And the worst thing in the world would be for me to wake up at 5 for my morning routine and be like, hey, I had a tire blowout last night and I couldn't run 2 different complexes.
Right.
That's a bad morning.
Right.
That's like a might lose business bad morning, right?
Yeah.
So for me, a lot of the work that I get done editing videos or other stuff is at night. You know, I'm a night owl. Mm-hmm. And so my morning routine, a lot of the times when I have my quiet time to do the things that I need to do, it's at night, which I don't see as a problem.
No.
I don't think it's an issue. I think there are some, like I mentioned on the last episode, there's a lot of people that do stuff at night. So I'll call my morning routine the stuff that I do at night. It's the time that I can sit down and focus and do all that kind of stuff. And it's a lifestyle thing now. If you are one of the people that doesn't have to get up early, or excuse me, doesn't have to stay up late,
Yeah.
I think getting up early is the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
Even on the mornings like this morning, I didn't go to bed particularly early last night, but I feel great this morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? It may change. I mean, you're in your 20s. By the time you get to your 30s, it may be different.
Very true. Yeah. And if that's the case, I would love, like, I feel like, you know, talking about versions of our best selves, I would love to be, especially like as a father figure to my kids, the guy who gets up early and, you know, my kids know that I get up early and I work really hard and kind of do all that stuff. And it's no question that every single person that I've read a success book out of gets up early.
Yeah.
They just do. They were talking about, you were talking about athletes, Caleb. The most successful, every time you hear about like the J.J. Watts of the world or the Michael Jordans of the world, they always say the same thing. The dude was in the gym at 4 a.m. The dude was in the gym at 5 a.m.
Tiger Woods, he was on the driving range every morning at 6 a.m. and he would hit 2 buckets of balls
Right.
before his day would start, and then he would start training.
So it's like there's no secret. You know, as far as this, is it worth it? Absolutely, it's worth it. I think that for me, when I'm most in the zone with my morning routine or my nighttime routine, well, particularly, let me go back to the morning because I have to have something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's a cup of coffee. I love having coffee in the morning. And so that's my thing is like when I wake up, instead of thinking, oh my God, I'm so freaking tired, it's like, okay, I gotta get a cup of coffee. And so I'll get up and start making the coffee. So I think if you give yourself something to look forward to, I think that helps. And no question, you have to have something to do.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You got to be intentional.
Yeah. If you're just like getting up to check YouTube, just sleep.
Right.
I mean, you got to have like, okay, I've got deadlines or I'm writing a book or I got to edit this podcast, I got to edit these videos or I'm studying for the class that I'm teaching. So good luck if you don't have anything to do getting up because your brain's going to go, you don't need to get up.
I don't understand not having anything to do because you could at least work out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everyone could do that. Even me.
I wasn't going to say it. So yeah, I think that's a great question. Just as a side note, if you ever have a question, if you're one of our listeners, anybody, young, old, if you have any questions for us, let us know. Just email prstofmusic@gmail.com, or if you have some dank memes, as they say in the field.
Or we've had people comment on
I've
the
never
YouTube
said that.
videos.
Yeah, comment YouTube videos. That works too.
Facebook works. I mean, any of these mediums where you can get stuff to us, those all seem to work.
Yep. And so, just final. Do you have any other questions? Any final comments?
I actually want to add one quick thing adding on to that last question. Y'all talked about sleeping. I don't remember specifically what you were saying, but I think that plays into it too. For going back to my point, for setting yourself up for the day, you need to get a good night's rest. You know, if you know you're gonna have a day where you're gonna sleep and you have nothing going on, then like, sure, do whatever you want. Like, I mean, I'm not gonna say what to do, but if you have something that's important the next day, I think setting yourself up for the day and having a good routine doesn't necessarily start in the morning, but can start the night before.
Yeah.
Yep. 100%.
I mean, I know. I mean, I just hear about tons of. I mean, college kids specifically, just because I'm in that environment that just are doing things on weekdays, school days, like into the early hours of the night. I think it's
Going to the bar.
personally- yeah, and just other things. So there's just our video games
Or watching people play video games.
Oh yeah,
Right.
What in the world?
I just think it's an incredibly foolish thing to do. I mean, you're paying for college, or if you're in a career, it's like you're making money and hopefully providing for yourself and possibly for a family too. And so, it's an incredibly important thing to not screw yourself over. Just in the night
Just
before.
by going to, I think that's 100% true. And there's a reason why parents put their kids to bed early.
Exactly.
Because I think this is 100% true. This is the last point we'll make. The way you start your day is the way your day is basically going to go.
Yeah.
You can turn it around, but I would rather just have the ship going in the right direction when I wake up rather than having to write it all morning. And that's something that I've heard from Darren Hardy all the way to Tony Robbins and all those kind of guys where it's like, dude, if you start out your day in chaos and behind, you're going to feel behind all day long.
Yeah.
And truth be told, you probably are behind all day long.
Right.
So, anyways, we've got to go to work.
Yeah.
Get work done, son. So, and you've got to go to your 9 a.m. So you've only got 2.5 hours to get there.
Study time for my quiz.
Yeah. So we really appreciate you coming out.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
It was a
and
blast.
we'll have you on again because you're going to gain some perspective, and it's what we're trying to do here. It's no secret. We're trying to give some perspective to people who are going down the path that you,
Sure.
me, we're all on. You know,
Yeah.
and that is, and it doesn't necessarily just pertain to music, like Jonathan was talking about. It pertains to just life in general. Because whether you're a music educator or you're an interior designer or you're an engineer, you're going to run into these things. And I think there's a perfect application to everything that we talk about. So, we really appreciate all of our listeners for listening, and we'll see you on Friday for the John Ahlstrom podcast.
Yeah.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah. All right. Woo, woo. Okay. Signing off. Peace. Do you want to say bye?
Bye.
I think that's going to be our starting clip. All right. Peace.